次は丈太郎。貴様だ。
やろう。ディオ。
ほう、向かってくるのか。逃げずにこのディオに近づいてくるのか。せっかく祖父のジョセフが私のザワールドの正体を試験終了チャイム直前まで問題を解いている受験生のような必死こいた気分で教えてくれたというのに。
近づかなきゃてめえをぶちのめせないんだな。
ほほう、では十分近づくがよい。
On pretty much every video that I've released, there will always be at least one person in the comments asking me to talk about one gun in particular. So for the fellows who kept commenting about it, this video is for you, although it might not be in the way you're hoping. The reason for that is because I've been seeing a pretty concerning number of people claiming that it is a tier 1 assault rifle that is even better than some of the current meta options. So this video will be a bit different from the last one because I'll be comparing this weapon to the meta flex assault rifles, and that should hopefully showcase the problem with the Peacekeeper Mark II. But before we get into the actual comparison itself, I should explain how it's going to work. I'll be comparing the Peacekeeper against a few of the other tier 1 flex assault rifles in several categories, ranking them based on how well they do in each one. Now as for the weapons we'll be comparing it to, we have the XM4, DRH, and BP50. As for the other tier 1 assault rifles, I'll be excluding them for the sake of this comparison. The Odin in terms of functionality is drastically different compared to the other assault rifles, and it's pretty well established to be the best assault rifle as of the time of this video, so it wouldn't be a fair comparison. The Type 19 is a little too similar to the XM4, and if anything it's slightly behind the XM4, so its inclusion will be a bit redundant. And the HVK30 is excluded due to slight time to kill inconsistency, which will create caveats in the comparison, making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. So the first aspect that most people look at is the lethality. Here we're not just focusing on the raw time to kill, but also the range, fire rate, and potential. The DRH is ranked first here as it features the fastest time to kill at 210 milliseconds and the second best range extending up to 36 meters. Although this comes at the cost of having a pretty slow fire rate, which makes missed shots quite a bit more punishing. The XM4 is in second place due to having a combination of decent time to kill at 240 milliseconds, competitive fire rate, very consistent hitboxes requiring only 2 shots above the legs, and the ability to 3-tap with just a single headshot for a really fast time to kill. The XM4 does have the least range out of the 4 weapons, but it is still decent for the flex playstyle. The BP50 comes in third as it has the slowest time to kill out of the 4 weapons at 252 milliseconds, which is right on the cusp of being just too slow to compete against the current meta. However, the BP50 makes up for this by having an incredibly fast fire rate, making missed shots way more forgiving, which results in a much more realistic time to kill. And just like the XM4, the BP50's time to kill is extremely consistent, requiring just 1 shot above the legs, while also being able to kill incredibly fast with just 1 headshot. The Peacekeeper unfortunately lands in last place. Its time to kill is very similar to the BP50 at 250 milliseconds, however, it doesn't have the additional benefits to make up for it. It doesn't have a crazy fast fire rate, so missed shots aren't as forgiving, and headshots on this weapon are completely useless, so you have no way of killing any faster. It does have the most range out of the 4 weapons at 39 meters, but this is not that much better than the DRH, which has way better time to kill. And as a flex weapon, your time to kill should be able to compete in closer ranges to some degree, and the Peacekeeper is the least effective out of the 4 weapons. Accuracy is the second most important aspect of a weapon. After all, what good is time to kill when you can't hit your shots in the first place? All 4 weapons have good enough BSA and hit flinch to reliably take most practical ranges in standard multiplayer, so they won't be significant factors in this comparison. Which just leaves us with the recoil. When it comes to recoil, the BP50 easily comes out on top, having some of the least recoil in the game as the kick is very low, so you hardly have to pull down to hit your shots. And the pattern is very simple, going up with a slight lean to the right, so even the most novice of players will have no issues in controlling it. The XM4 also has some pretty easy recoil, being perfectly f***ing vertical. So even though it has more kick than the BP-50, you can be dangerously accurate at range once you find the exact speed to pull down, as you don't even have to think about pulling horizontally. The DRH's kick is fairly low due to the slower fire rate, although the pattern isn't as unidirectional. The first 5 shots will lean to the left before switching to the right for the remainder of the spray. It is still pretty controllable since the pattern is quite easy to learn, but it is not as brain dead as the first two, which have next to no learning curve. And then we have the Peacekeeper. Similar to the DRH, the Peacekeeper has a recoil pattern that you actually have to think about, going up into the left for the first half of the spray before switching to the right. However, the Peacekeeper's recoil climbs noticeably faster, and its horizontal recoil is a good bit harsher. Now its overall recoil is not bad, but out of 4 weapons here, yeah, it is the worst one. So far, it's not looking so good for the Peacekeeper, so maybe it gets better when it comes to mobility and handling. In this department, the BP-50 is the best one. In fact, this is the biggest upside of the weapon, as it features mobility and handling that is on par with SMGs, so you can be very aggressive with this gun. The Peacekeeper for once doesn't land in last place here. Its ADS time is barely slower than the BP-50, being only 5 milliseconds slower, which is basically nothing. It also has a combination of decent sprint and ADS movement speed. Now you can make the ADS movement speed even faster with the Agile stock, although your recoil will be much worse because you have to sacrifice the foregrip. The XM4 also features very fast ADS time for an assault rifle, although it is a bit slower than the first two. It also features a very fast sprint speed, allowing you to get around the map very quickly. However, its ADS movement speed is on the slower end at below 3 meters per second. You can make it noticeably faster by swapping the Bruiser grip with the Raider pad, but now your sprint speed is average and your already wide hipfire sprint gets even worse. So you can't have good ADS movement speed and sprint speed at the same time on this weapon. In terms of mobility, the DRH is very similar to the Peacekeeper, as it features above average sprint and ADS movement speed, but its ADS time is a lot slower than the other 3 weapons, being average for assault rifles. This means that out of 4 weapons here, you have to pre-aim quite a bit more, and you can't be as aggressive with the DRH, which is why it ends up in last place here. The last aspect we'll be looking at here are the magazine characteristics, so this includes mag size, reload times, and reserve ammo. The XM4 is the best one in this category as its mag size of 50 grants it the highest kills per mag out of the 4 weapons here. It also comes with 2 extra mags in reserve, having 6 instead of the usual 4, meaning that the chances of you running out of ammo are very low. It does have a slower reload time, but it is still fairly manageable. Despite having a larger mag size, the BP-50 comes in second due to requiring an additional shot to kill, meaning that the total kills per mag comes out to be slightly less than the XM4, although this difference is fairly negligible. Its reload times are pretty similar to the XM4 as well. The reason it is placed lower is because, unlike the XM4, which features 2 extra mags in reserve, this one features 1 less mag in reserve compared to most weapons, which makes running out of ammo quite a bit more common on this gun. The Peacekeeper has a noticeably smaller mag size than the XM4 at 40, resulting in less kills per mag. To make up for this, the Peacekeeper has an extremely fast reload time of less than a second. This does not place it any higher, as generally speaking, it is better to have a larger mag size than a faster reload time. It doesn't matter how fast your gun reloads, as long as you get caught needing to reload at all, you're going to die. With a larger mag size, you wouldn't need to worry about reloading as often in the first place. And finally, we have the DRH. It has the lowest kills per mag out of the 4 weapons, so you will get caught reloading the most often. Just like the Peacekeeper, the DRH features a reload time of less than a second. This is actually thanks to the BSA buff it received this season, so you no longer have to run the granular grip tape to have very good BSA, which frees up a slot for the sleight of hand perk. So let's do a quick summary of each weapon. The DRH is the heavy hitter, great time to kill and range at the cost of a smaller mag size. The XM4 is the perfect jack of all trades, featuring competitive overall stats with no real weakness. The BP-50 is the true AR-SMG hybrid, combining the mobility and handling of an SMG with the range of an assault rifle, but its time to kill is a bit slower. And the Peacekeeper is the The Peacekeeper is the long range no, it doesn't have the recoil for that, and the DRH has pretty similar range with way better time to kill. Okay, maybe it's another all-rounder. Nope, the XM4 already does that, while being easier to use and with better time to kill. Alright, then it's gotta be an AR-SMG hybrid, right? Oh, wait. That's literally what the BP-50 does, but worse. See, this is the problem with the Peacekeeper Mark II. it spreads itself too thin. It tries to have a bit of everything but ends up having very conflicting stats, which makes it very difficult to pinpoint a proper use case that its competition doesn't already cover. You could say that it is better in the hands of skilled players, but that argument doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when you have weapons that require way less effort while being just as, if not more effective in return. Now, don't get me wrong, the Peacekeeper is by no means a bad weapon. In fact, it is easily one of the better assault rifles that we have. It has great range, fast mobility and handling, along with decent time to kill, which makes it pretty versatile. But you know what else is versatile? Literally every other meta flex weapon, and unlike a Peacekeeper, these guns have an actual niche. The build for the Peacekeeper is really quite simple. Start with the Task Force Barrel. This is the mandatory attachment as it improves our range and time to kill. Agency Suppressor for concealment, Firm Grip Tape for improved ADS time and hit flinch, and a double stack mag for increased mag size and faster reloads. As for the last attachment, you have two main options here. For most players, I recommend the foregrip as this helps to massively cut down on that horizontal recoil. Alternatively, you can use a lightweight stock which will give you some very fast strafe speed, but I don't really like it as much since I prefer hitting my shots over moving side to side faster. And that covers everything there is to know about the Peacekeeper Mark II. I would just like to make this very clear, I do not hate the Peacekeeper. In fact, I think it's in a really good state ever since the buff to its recoil a couple seasons back. It is still a phenomenal off-meta assault rifle that can compete against some of the upper tier options while being pretty fun to use. It's just not a top 2 assault rifle as some would have put it. But that's just my experience from using the weapon, so what do you guys think about the Peacekeeper? Do you still think that is the best assault rifle, or perhaps this video has convinced you to move it down a little bit? Be sure to let me know in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, please leave a like and subscribe. But until then, I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye bye!